this is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for after over 3 months, our pro-metabolic shred reveal. That being said, if you haven't seen our We're Getting Shredded video, I encourage you to go check that out first. I will link it below so you have the context. Of course, I say we're getting shredded, we got shredded tongue-in-cheek. Our goal was not to get bodybuilder, bikini competitor lean. That wouldn't be good for our hormones or our overall health, but we did want to lean out a bit, and my goal with all of this was to hopefully show an example of healthy fat loss, how it can be supportive to the body, how you can do it without running your metabolism totally into the ground, and feeling like garbage and yo-yoing. So hopefully I was able to do that throughout the process with the videos that I shared, but this is the really exciting part. This is where we get to show the results, show the before and after we do that, I'm gonna touch base on just a few kind of takeaways that I want to share throughout this whole process. But of course, if you have questions about it, let me know down below, and I apologize if there's a little bit of background noise. It's beautiful outside. I'm out here with the sunrise, but I think the garbage man is too. Anyways, let me know if you have questions down below and I'll do my best to answer them. But first, we need to revisit where we started. My husband and I did this together, so I'm going to show you my before first, his before, and then we'll get into the after. So I started out at 164 pounds. I tested my body fat percentage 2 different ways because it's really difficult to get an accurate body fat percentage calculation or estimation. So I used the InBody at my work, and according to the InBody, I started at about 29.8% body fat, which could be accurate, could be just a little bit high, but it provides a good, data point. I also did a 3-point caliper test, and according to the 3-point caliper test, I came out to 25% body fat, which I feel is probably a little bit low. So using those 2 numbers together, I think it's safe to say that somewhere in between is probably an appropriate guess, somewhere between about 25 and 29.8% body fat. All right, so moving on to Samuel. Samuel started out at 203 pounds, and we ran into some issues when it came to estimating his body fat percentage. First of all, I did the InBody through my work, and he didn't have access to it, so we couldn't use that. We attempted to use the caliper test on him using different points. We also attempted to just measure using a tape measure. Can't remember what that's called, but there's another formula. Everything that he was getting was coming out to about 8% body fat, which just is not realistic for where he was at. And as I said in the previous video, or the starting video, if he were 8% body fat, he certainly would not be needing to lose any more fat. That would not be appropriate. So anyways, he started out at 203 pounds, and then we estimated, just based on a chart of different men at different body fat percentages, that he was somewhere between about 15 and 16% body fat. But in retrospect, Samuel would like to amend that. He thinks he was in denial. I don't necessarily agree, but he thinks he was probably about 17 to 18% body fat. So anywhere in that range, a good starting guess. Okay, the fun part. Let's get into the results. Starting with me, I lost a total of 17 pounds over the past about 3 months, coming down to, my low weigh-in was 146.6, but we're gonna round that up to 147 pounds. According to the InBody scan, my body fat percentage now is at 23.4%, and according to the caliper test, it's at 22.9%. So pretty notable difference there. I think it's interesting how the caliper and the InBody scans got a lot closer together as I got leaner, and I think that's, given how they kind of corroborate each other, that's probably a relatively accurate estimate, somewhere between about 23 and 24% body fat, 23.5% body fat. So I am so happy with how that turned out. I feel so good, and I hit probably my biggest goal throughout the entire process, earlier than I even thought I would, which was to get my first pull-up. I actually made a video a couple weeks back about how I got my first pull-up, and that hasn't been published yet, but it will be published a few more weeks down the road. Now, at that time, I said that I was only able to do 1. I hadn't gotten 2 yet, but y'all, yesterday I got 2 pull-ups in a row, and I'm so excited. It really just gave me so much confidence in my body, because that was one of those things that just felt so unattainable. And I'm really excited to continue to improve my strength and my strength to mass ratio moving forwards. So I'll show you a little before and after here, kind of juxtaposing these two clips, before, the after. Overall, again, really satisfied with the transformation. So moving on to Samuel, he lost also 17 pounds. Funny how that worked out. And his weight now is 186, and using the same metric we did earlier, a chart of men at different body fat percentages, we are estimating that he's at about 12% body fat. I think he could be down closer to about 11. As you get leaner, the 1% are bigger and bigger hops, but somewhere between probably about 11 and 12% for him. So I think he looks awesome. Very happy with his results as well. He is very happy with his results as well, which is what matters most. And I, again, will throw up the before and after right here. So something that we have been hugely proud of throughout this process is our ability to maintain and even continue gaining strength as we have been at a deficit. That was an indicator to me that we weren't going too fast and that we were kind of acting responsibly throughout the entire process. I was able to keep lifting heavier and heavier weights, just at the beginning of this week, still at a very slight deficit, as you will understand in next week's video, which is on my reverse diet as we're coming out of this. Just at the beginning of this week, I was able to hit my bench press PR, which was, I think it was 180 for 2 sets of 5, and then an additional set of 4. I failed on the 5th repetition, which, doesn't sound like anything crazy, but for me, that was huge. The pull-ups are huge. My rows have gotten stronger. Everything just feels more doable. And with Samuel as well, he's been lifting for longer and really doing dedicated lifting for longer, and when you're in that boat, you don't see necessarily as much improvement as quickly, but he has still been able to hold on to his strength. His pull-ups have gone through the roof. He does a lot of weighted pull-ups, and I can't remember what the numbers were on those, but anyways, it just continued to go up. And of course, with things like body weight movements, as you're getting leaner, you have the advantage of having to carry less mass, but I don't know, it's shown up across the board. So I am going to touch base about just a couple takeaways, like I said I would do at the beginning of the video, but again, I encourage you to look out for next week's video on a day in my reverse diet, because there I go in more depth about how we're coming out of this, what it's going to look like moving forwards, and some more takeaways when it comes to caloric intake and appetite. But number one takeaway for me was just, I guess, this realization that I could be eating so many more fruits and vegetables than I already am. So as we were at a deficit, of course, to feel full and feel satiated, it makes sense within reason to eat some foods that are going to be a little bit less calorically dense. So I was still eating my good meat sources. I was still eating dairy. I was still eating, full fat dairy for most of the time. I've always done 2% cottage cheese, and sometimes fat-free yogurt, just because I think they're helpful assets as long as I'm getting my fat in elsewhere. But all that goes to say, I was still eating my healthy protein and fat sources, animal protein, animal fat sources. But instead of, getting as many of my carbohydrates from maybe bread, as great as, sourdough bread is, or pasta or things like that, which I love and absolutely have a place in your diet, in my diet for sure, I was incentivized to just eat more vegetables and, preparing them properly, experiment with different things, different ways we can get them into our bodies. And honestly, I've never felt better. I almost felt convicted about, I think I eat really well and eat really clean, but it's I could be getting so many more plant foods into my diet each and every day, and I think it's really important to get an abundance of both animal and plant foods into your diet every day. So that was a big takeaway, just the level of kind of cleanliness of my diet on a day-to-day basis, and getting more fiber and nutrient density and all of that stuff. So that's something that Samuel and I are absolutely going to carry on into our regular diets, as we are, eating at maintenance. And the second thing I wanted to touch base about was kind of when I started to feel it, as we'll say. So for the most part, I was at about a 500 calorie deficit from where I started, and my starting maintenance calories was at about 2,700 calories, and the only adjustments until the very end that were made were in my Fitness Pal. I made the mistake of inputting like my updated weight, and it automatically adjusts your like TDEE in there, so it was lowering my calories. And for a while I was like, okay, like whatever, it can lower my calories just a little bit. So it was technically below where I started, but it was saying it was like 500 below whatever my maintenance TDEE was, because as your weight goes down, your caloric needs also go down. But we're going to call that for the most part about 500, and it felt pretty good. The first week, as I mentioned in an earlier video, was a little bit challenging in the sense that I hadn't quite figured out when to like manage my macronutrient timing, I suppose. And so the first week I was like going to bed hungry, which was a huge red flag. I was like, that's not okay. I can't let that happen. But in the second week, just by timing a little bit more protein earlier on in the day, a little bit more carbohydrates, and of course still balancing my macronutrients, but just proportionally a little bit more carbohydrates in the evening, I was able to stay full going to bed throughout the night and overall feel satisfied. First week, I think it's also hard because your body's just like, what are you doing? And it's adjusting to everything. But after that, honestly, pretty smooth sailing. We, let ourselves have margin, and like we go out on our date night and not track on our date night. And if we're out of town for a weekend, we would just eat mindfully and not worry about it. And overall, that worked pretty well. Last like 3 weeks, I don't remember exactly how long it was for, but we did drop down to about a 750 calorie deficit. And I will say at this point, I was already kind of like reaching the tail end and just like over it. That was where it got tough. 750 calories below maintenance. And again, because of the adjustment, I think I was eating 1,890 calories, which for me felt super low. And it's crazy how big of a difference those 250 calories make. At that point, it became harder to manage my blood sugar, but I was just trying to be more rigorous about like how I was timing my meals, my protein and carbs, and pairing them together. It was okay. And I was able to kind of adjust to it. But honestly, it was the last week at that 750 calorie deficit that I just realized like this is too much. My body is not loving this. I, for the first time, really started to see my strength kind of like suffer a little bit. I was not feeling great mentally, and I was thinking about like, well, I'm almost to the end. I should just kind of barrel forwards, push through. But I realized that totally goes against everything I believe in. I need to take a step back and allow my body to not feel awful as I am trying to coax it into a slightly lower body fat percentage. But anyway, I did that. I felt better, and I'm very happy with the results. So I guess the overall summary from that rambly little bit is I would not recommend going that deep. If you are just looking to get leaner, improve your performance, get healthier overall, if you're genuinely someone who needs to lose fat, I again say that this isn't for everybody. This is just, my experience, and I wanted to provide a good example of what this can look like, and to say that, there is a healthy way to do it, but I know there are plenty of people for whom it would not be healthy to even try to lose fat at this time. Okay, if you're one of those people who it actually would benefit you, the slower you go, the better I think it's going to be. Even starting at like a 250 calorie deficit, you can go deeper, maybe go down to 500 calories at some point. But there's this like adage that the slower you lose the fat, the longer you keep the fat off. And I think that's so true. It has to do with hormone regulation, but also just has to do with sustainability and like willpower. And you'll feel better if you don't go too deep into it as you implement habits to help sustain, those lifestyle changes during like the duration of your deficit. I think 500 calories is pretty doable, but I would not recommend going deeper than that. So just my 2 cents. At this point, we're rambling again, but I hope that this is helpful to y'all. Again, if you have specific questions, let me know down below, and keep an eye out for next week's video, a day in our reverse diet, so that you can have context as to how we're moving forwards and get more of the metabolic health piece. We're really going to be diving into that then. So thanks so much. Until next time. Bye, y'all.